Mayor Dyer, Mayor Dyer, City Commissioners, and fellow citizens, thank you for your leadership in the very important and sensitive conversation around Tinkerfield. My name is Ted Haddock, and I represent the Haddock Family Foundation, which exists to advance restorative relationships between people and planet through human dignity and environmental stewardship. In the process of engaging community development at Holden Heights, Paramore, and the West Lakes communities, our foundation became aware of concerns related to the future of Tinkerfield. The information readily available on Tinkerfield's baseball and civil rights history was sparse, and I couldn't find anyone who could give a date for when Jackie Robinson played there. The information on Dr. King's visit was thin. Even for an Orlando native and baseball lover like me, I hadn't seen much in our city about Tinkerfield's baseball history. So, our foundation decided to look further into these ideas and produce the research entitled Tinkerfield in the New Orlando, a city history of baseball and community integration. And I would like to submit a copy for the record today as a resource for everyone interested in the history and involved in the conversation. We learned that the general claims were indeed substantial. We found out not one, but a total of 5 local articles described Dr. King's visit. Jackie Robinson did play in Orlando in 2 significant games. First in November 1950 at Carter Street Park, since he and the Jackie Robinson All-Stars were not allowed to play at Tinkerfield. And then for the first time at Tinker on March 17, 1953, when the Brooklyn Dodgers, with the Brooklyn Dodgers and Roy Campanella as well, which drew Tinkerfield's all-time record crowd of 6,500 fans, and that's 2,500 over capacity at the time. The crowd was substantially diverse racially, which was another first for Orlando. However, Robinson didn't break the color barrier in Orlando, but it did happen. And, well, I had a rhetorical question for you. I had not met anyone who knew the man's first name, or the man's name, but it was Ray Dandridge of the Minneapolis Millers in a spring training game against the Washington Senators on March 31st, 1950. Ray Dandridge never made it to the major leagues, but he was elected to the National Baseball Hall of Fame as a member of the Negro Leagues. We also rediscovered a key piece of civil rights history, which our city can be really proud of. On April 5th, 1939, Orlando's Interracial Committee hosted a key Negro Leagues exhibition game between the Homestead Grays and the Newark Eagles. This was the first of its kind in Orlando, and 7 future Hall of Famers were on the rosters that night, including the legendary Josh Gibson. What's more, renowned sports writer Shirley Povich of the Washington Daily was at the game with members of the Washington Senators. Povich was so impressed with the level of play that he wrote an article advocating for integration in Major League Baseball. This was in 1939. This is 8 years before Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in Brooklyn. Povich's article elevated the conversation to a national level, and because of a game at Tinkerfield and the leadership of Orlando's Interracial Committee. It would be 24 more years until Orlando's fully embraced integration under the leadership of Mayor Bob Carr, but this came primarily from pressure from Major League Baseball. As a city that prizes equality and fairness, we owe a significant debt of gratitude to Tinkerfield as the magnet that drew both Major League Baseball and the city's initial civil rights events that led us down a path to a better future. These are unique events that we as a community and city can be proud of. No other geography or structure in our city, and few in the nation, embody the depth of baseball and civil rights history more than Tinkerfield. The reason I mention a few of these stories now is that they are consistent with the idea of preserving Tinkerfield as an historic landmark. And I thank the City of Orlando for putting forward Ordinance 2015-6. While the ordinance, as it is drafted, does some good in spirit and intent, the proposed language essentially strips significant provisions and accountability that are necessary and normal for protecting the historic and cultural assets of our city's historic landmarks. It's a pet peeve of mine when people point out something wrong and don't have a solution, so we've actually proposed some language to adjust the potential gaps between the spirit of the ordinance and the practical provisions that it establishes. Commissioner Hill and I had the opportunity to discuss these edits with city officials last week, and I think given the busy weekend with Orlando City Soccer, it didn't make it into the draft yet. We've discussed that earlier, but it is not in the draft that we've discussed today. It would seem premature then to vote on an incomplete draft, and therefore I would respectfully request that the first reading proceed today with a no vote, and that voting on the ordinance be tabled until the language is complete, presumably in advance of the second reading later this month. As a second thought, let's assume for a moment that this ordinance has been approved. Given that the 1963 grandstands are not protected as an historic landmark, it's permissible for the city to tear them down as an act in and of itself. However, to do so violates section 65.720 of Orlando Historics Preservation Code, that the demolition and removal of grandstands, dugout, press box, scorecard, etc., referred to as non-contributing resources, imposes a dramatic adverse effect on the, this is the quoted language, integrity of setting, feeling, and association of the historic landmark,
That's your time. Sorry, I should have given you a 30-second warning.
Okay. If I may just make my final recommendation to provide actual protection for the historic landmark by way of a normal process and standards in the language, and to make real commitments to preserve the integrity of setting, feeling, and association of the historic landmark as an historic ballpark. Thank you.
Thank you.